So what price would you be willing to pay to completely change the world? For the Titan Prometheus, one of the old gods who was around long before Zeus, the answer was, well, an eternity of suffering. This is the incredible myth of the fire he stole for all of us, the defiance that defined him, and the absolutely unimaginable price he paid for being humanity's champion. I would not exchange my own misfortune for your servitude. Wow. I mean, just let that sink in. These are the words of someone in, unimaginable pain. And yet he's saying he finds more freedom in all that suffering than in just obeying his captors. It's got to be one of the most powerful, defiant statements ever put to paper. So who on earth would say something like that while being tortured forever? The speaker is Prometheus. He's a Titan, and his name literally means forethought, or the one who thinks ahead. And that's key, because his foresight showed him a world that was just totally out of balance, and it was an injustice he just couldn't let slide. All right, so let's set the scene. Way back in the dawn of myth, the universe was split right down the middle. You had the gods on one side, all-powerful, living the good life, and then on the other side, you had humanity. And they were weak, they were vulnerable, just struggling to survive in a world that was definitely not made for them. And that contrast was stark. I mean, really stark. The philosopher Plato even described early humans as naked and unshod, without bedding or weapons. They had literally nothing. The gods, on the other hand, had everything. And that everything included the one thing, the one tool that could change the whole game: fire. For Prometheus, seeing this, well, it was an injustice he knew he had to fix. So how exactly does a, let's say, lesser god take on the king of the entire cosmos? Well, not with brute force. You do it with cunning. The stage for his first big act of rebellion was this meeting at a place called Macone. This was a huge deal, because it's where the roles of gods and mortals were going to be set in stone, forever. And man, was Prometheus clever. He takes a sacrificial ox and splits it into two piles. Now get this. One pile looked disgusting, right? He covered it with the ox's stomach. But underneath, that's where all the good meat was, and that was for humanity. The other pile, though, looked amazing, all covered in glistening, desirable fat. But it was just a pile of worthless bones. Now, according to the poet Hesiod, Zeus totally saw through the trick. He wasn't fooled for a second. But probably out of pride, he chose the bones anyway. So while this was a great deal for humans when it came to future sacrifices, it made Zeus absolutely furious. He'd been tricked, and he decided humanity was going to pay the price. And that price? Zeus took away their fire. Okay, so Zeus's payback left humanity literally cold and helpless. This forced Prometheus's hand. He had to do something else. But this time, no more tricks. We're talking about straight-up theft. He sneaks into the divine workshop of Hephaestus and Athena, steals the embers of fire and something called technical wisdom, and smuggles it all down to Earth, hidden inside the hollow stalk of a fennel plant. So sneaky. And with that one single act, everything changed. I mean, everything. This was so much more than just staying warm. Fire was the spark of civilization itself. Suddenly, humanity had the power to create, to build, to stop being victims of the world and start becoming masters of it. This was the birth of technology, and with it came a completely new kind of power. But you just know a gift this huge is going to come with an equally huge price tag, right? For Zeus, this wasn't just a simple theft. Oh no. This was a fundamental upending of the cosmic order, and his fury, well, it was going to be legendary. So as Prometheus is being dragged off to his punishment, one of Zeus's enforcers, a guy named Kratos, and his name literally means power, by the way, he says this really chilling line, and it just perfectly sums up Zeus's whole worldview. Freedom is a perk reserved for the king of the gods. That's it. Anyone else who challenges that authority has to be crushed. No mercy. And the punishment? Oh, it was designed to be the ultimate expression of that absolute power. We're not talking about a simple prison sentence. We're talking about an eternal, unending agony. Just try to wrap your head around this. Every single day. For thousands of years, an eagle sent by Zeus would fly down and eat his liver. And because he was immortal, every single night his body would regenerate, only for the exact same torture to begin all over again at dawn. It's just a truly horrifying concept, this idea of eternal agony. And this is the incredible part of the story, This is where it turns from a tragedy about punishment into an epic of pure defiance. Because even though his body was literally being broken every single day, his spirit, it remained completely, totally unchained. There wasn't an ounce of regret in him. He owned his choice, 100%. In the famous play Prometheus Bound, he basically declares that his only crime was his love for mankind. He knew exactly what the cost would be, and he makes it crystal clear he'd do it all over again in a heartbeat. And that brings us to this amazing final confrontation. See, Zeus knows Prometheus is holding on to a secret, a really big one. So he sends his messenger, Hermes, with a deal. He says, look, just tell me the prophecy that threatens my throne, and all this torture will stop. You'll be free. Freedom in exchange for just one little secret. But for Prometheus, it was never, ever that simple. And this is where we come full circle. Right back to that incredible line from the very beginning. He looks at Hermes and tells him straight up that he would rather suffer his own misfortune than become a servant like him. It's just the ultimate statement of principle over comfort, right? Choosing freedom of the spirit over freedom of the body. So you might be wondering, did all this suffering ever actually end? The answer is yes, but not for thousands of years. And super important, it wasn't because he finally broke. Nope. His liberation was going to require the arrival of the greatest hero of them all. Okay, so what was this huge secret he was holding on to? It was a prophecy, all about the sea goddess Thetis. It said that any son she had was fated to become more powerful than his own father. Now, if that father happened to be Zeus, well, his reign would be over. That, my friends, is the ultimate leverage. And so, finally, after literal ages of torment, who shows up? None other than Zeus's own son, the hero Heracles. He finds Prometheus chained up in the mountains, and this time, with Zeus's permission, because, Zeus desperately needed that secret to avoid his own downfall, Heracles shoots the eagle, breaks the chains, and sets the Titan free. And here's a really fascinating little detail to wrap things up. To get around a technicality in his own oath that Prometheus would technically remain bound forever, Zeus ordered him to wear a ring forged from one of the links of his chains, set with a piece of the rock he was bound to. It's pretty cool, right? This myth is sometimes seen as the origin story for why we wear rings, as a constant reminder of a bond, a sacrifice, and ultimately a victory. When you think about it, the gift Prometheus gave us, knowledge, technology, civilization itself, it really is the foundation of our modern world. But his story leaves us with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, what is the real price of all our progress? And maybe more importantly, what are we willing to endure for the things we say we believe in?